Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome along to this week's installment of my podcast, Let's Talk Horses. I'm so excited about my guests this week. I was a little nervous leading up to this episode, actually, reading and researching you over these weeks, and I'm so grateful that you chose to come on and join me. Welcome to my very special guest this week, Matthias Geysen. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, but thank you a lot for inviting me. It's an honor being here. Thank you.
Cool. So I always start this podcast. I'm really interested to ask you this question, actually. How did horses come into your life, Matthias? How did this journey all begin for you?
So everything started for me when I was at the age of 10. So I started riding horses together with my father. So for him, I mean, we never followed any lessons. We never followed any courses. He just bought two horses, very random. Horses obviously were already been ridden before. And for him was more, building the relationship in between father and son. So we took both of our horse. We went to the forest. We went exploring, which was a
Wow.
really beautiful experience. But then at the age of 12, I think for a small boy, it's not that cool anymore to ride horses, at least not in my parts of Europe. So then I decided to do skateboarding. I did competition skateboarding till the age of 18. And then afterwards, to keep it short, when I was 18, I do think obviously skateboarding, to be honest, it really taught me a lot of things. It teaches you discipline, it teaches you balance, it teaches you many things. But at the same time, during that period of time, I also lost a bit the connection with my parents. So the reason why I came back to the horses was actually to get back into connection with my dad. But when I came back to the horses, my dad decided to stop riding horses. So I think we rode together maybe 3 or 4 times. But for me, it was a very good thing because this way I was able to reconnect again with nature, my horses, with myself, and I was also able to let the past behind me. So it was, still a good thing to do.
Wow. And then fast forward to now, like I know, fitting all of this into a 30-minute podcast is sometimes interesting. And I'd really love to just really my aim with this podcast is to invite people to discover how much horses can actually contribute to us. Like it's this interesting thing that I've found with them where, I have my horses here that live with me in my property in Australia. And it's like every single time I interact with them, I walk away different. Like there's something they show me, there's something they teach me. And that's really what I strive to share in this podcast, and hearing it through people's stories that have built their lives around horses or maybe haven't. I have a lot of guests on that just ride occasionally even and tell stories of that. So, I mean, looking at your website and what you do now, can you talk a little bit about that connection that you looked for that horses gave you back with your dad, but also with nature, with yourself? Like, what is that for you where horses show you parts of you that is very different to what anything else in this world is a good example or shows you in the same way?
Well, to be honest, then you can really go in many, many directions, probably. But to keep it short, I do think one of the biggest advantages with horses is obviously the more we go into our minds, the more difficult it becomes to connect with horses. So it's a very good mirror to always show, okay, how much are we connected, how much are really in the moment connected with ourselves. And then, obviously it's going to improve the connection with them. But I do think one of the biggest things that I always try to share with people is that people always, in my opinion, have to see everything from a bigger perspective. Most of the people who are in the horse industry or the horse world, I'll say, they always see horses like the horses are just a little tip of the finger, a little tip of the finger. But we only concentrate on this little tip of the finger. So it's impossible, in my opinion, to go much deeper. If we're able to really connect with the whole body, then the tip of the finger becomes a logical consequence.
Yep.
So obviously horses can teach us to really help us to see the bigger perspective. But that's also one of the reasons why I think 3 or 4 years ago, for a little while, I really stopped working with horses, at least on a professional level, because I felt too limited in the things that I really would like to bring across to my clients. It's always about riding, it's always about liberty, it's always about, which is for sure very good. But the way how I like to really get to this point is it's a way of living. I try to find peace and calmness in every movement and every action I do throughout my day. And when I'm able to do this, then when I go to the horses, I mean, the connection is there straight away because I'm able to connect with myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was reading on your website as well, because, you know, watching what you've accomplished and what you've achieved with riding at Liberty, I think is something, like you said, a lot of people aspire to. But I think like what you said, they're missing the bigger picture, the actual invitation the horses are inviting us to beyond that. Like you said, you know, the finger of your nail, where it's really like a whole universe they want to show us. There's a whole realm of possibility that I think exists within them and exists within us, that where that, what you've talked about, that cohesiveness between us and them exists. So I was really interested actually to read where you were talking about having a mindset, like having your day actually be that of riding at Liberty, like that calmness. Like how do you accomplish that? How do you achieve, like, you know, we talked off air just before we came on about you're going through a fair bit of like chaos in your world at the moment. There's things going on. You guys are looking at properties, you're moving around, there's lots happening. What is it that brings the calmness into your world when sometimes it feels like it disappears?
It really depends. It really depends. I mean, generally speaking, to answer on the first question, if you're gonna ride a horse, for instance, in Liberty, to be really honest, riding a horse in Liberty, there is nothing special about it at all. Like really, not at all. If you know, if you're able to connect with yourself, if you connect with your surrounding, and you know how to really, you know, give the movements to the horse, there is nothing special at all. But getting to this point, that's obviously the really big difference. So now what happens very often these days, more and more people start doing liberty work, which is obviously very beautiful to see. But the question is, what does liberty really mean? There is a really big difference in between both. Because what we see very often now, without judging people, because I know everybody's always on their way, but what we see very often now, the way how we can break horses is by doing routine. You know, if you do dressage can be very good because it teaches you discipline. It teaches you how to really give small signals. It can have a very big value. But the problem people have with doing dressage is repeating the same thing over and over and over again, and that's what breaks the spirit of a horse. It's the same thing with us people. If we go through life and we have to do a job every day, the same thing over and over again, you're also going to break your spirit. Human and animals are not made in this kind of way. We have to explore. Every day has to be an adventure. It's the same thing with horses. If you now see horses who do liberty work, often the spirit is just as broke as people who do the dressage, because they repeat the same thing over and over again. The horse is following in liberty, but you can see it's not really true. It's not true liberty. So that's a really big thing, obviously. And then I do think personally for me, if I ride my horses in liberty, the reason why I do think because if I ride my horses, I made 3 or 4 videos, and because of those videos, I was able to really, travel the world and share my experience. But it's only just the riding. I don't teach my horses to lay down or make them go up and all those things, because personally for me that's less interesting. It's like you teach a dog to sit down. For me, it doesn't have any extra value. What I really like doing is really understanding, okay, what does my horse represents? That's the thing that's for me triggering. That's the thing that I would like to integrate into my life. So I do think I already achieved a little fraction of the possibilities that I have in my life. I captured this on video, and I do think when people see this, they get triggered by something because they see some kind of liberty that's behind. So the question is obviously, how do you get to this point of liberty? And I personally do think that people these days, we have way too much comfort. People have way too much comfort. Everything is life. I mean, let us say now, the people who are listening, some of them, for instance, they're going to be very cozy at home, with a blanket and a cup of coffee and a cup of tea and a biscuit, I don't know, which is very good. We can inspire people, but you will never learn into depth. This needs to be outside by leaving your comfort zone. There is a reason why, if you look at all the animals, there is a reason why they're all so sensitive, because they're confronted with the elements. They're always outside. So I try to give you one little example, and let me know if I speak too much. If you have
No, please. This is amazing. This is brilliant. Please keep going. Yep.
So one time I made a big journey with my horses, where I walked from Belgium to the south of France. It took me about 2 months of hiking. So obviously, if you do such kind of experience, it's going to create a different connection with your horse, obviously, because you go on an adventure, you're going to, cross obstacles, you're going to relate, and you have to trust each other in different kind of ways, which is a very good experience. What happens if you have, for instance, a day where there is really a lot of rain, but like really it doesn't stop, and you're hiking and you're cold and it's really annoying. It's just as annoying for me as it is for my horses. Now, if I'm lucky and I stop somewhere and I met a person on my way, he said, "Hey, what are you doing? Come to my place. I invite you. You can drink something. You can have a good sleep." When you stop somewhere and you put your horses on a pasture and you're able to go in, change your clothes, get a warm drink, have a warm meal, but your horses are still standing in the pasture in the rain, suffering. Then we have to ask ourselves the question: who's the lucky one?
Yeah.
To be really honest, if what happens with the horses when they're standing in rain for such a long period of time, it is not easy. It's not easy at all. What's the big advantage for them? The only way to find inner heat is to close their eyes and go to the inside of their body.
Mm-hmm.
They're obligated by nature to go to this point. If I would now have the same position as them and I would also be obligated to go stay outside, I will do the same. I will go in a little ball and I try to find this inner heat. The thing is, the advantage is when you're able to find this place in your body, it will never vanish.
Yeah.
Sometimes it may be more difficult to find it back, but it will never vanish. You can always get back to this point. So that's why I'm trying to explain. If we would be able to leave more of our comfort zones, it's much more necessary to get back to the essence of life. And obviously, there is a reason why it's difficult to leave a comfort zone, because there is a reason why it's called a comfort zone. So
Because it's
what we do
comfortable.
now, so what we do now is we do meditation, we do yoga, we do breath work, and all those things, which obviously can be very good and can be very helpful, but it's not going to be the solution.
Yeah.
If that would be the solution, there would be enlightened people all over the world, and I don't think that's the case, not even close.
Yeah.
Okay, so this can be helpful on the way, but my opinion, I can really say leaving your comfort zone, in my opinion, is much more effective. And one last thing about this, then you can ask other questions. If you have the comfort zone, it's very, very important to leave. And the second thing, which is also, in my opinion, very important, is to confront our fears. Each person knows their fears. The interesting thing about this is, why do I fear a certain kind of scenario and the other person isn't? It doesn't make any sense. It's just, so I try to give you one example with this. In the past, I was very afraid, for instance, to swim in the ocean or to swim in a lake. I was always thinking, oh, a big monster is gonna pull on my leg and I'm gonna drown and I'm gonna die. But at the same time, you see children playing in the lake, having fun, playing with the ball, and so it doesn't make any sense. It's just my own perception. So how can I solve it? By confronting my fears. I just have to go in the water. In the first minute, literally, I think I'm dying. After 2 minutes, it's still very bad. After 5 minutes, slowly but surely, I will start to relax. After 10 minutes, I will be able to feel the water, in a calm way. After 30 minutes, I really start enjoying. If then you're going to leave the water, you will see that you're going to feel much lighter. There is one obstacle less to connect with your inner self. Now, I do think if people would know the other side behind the fears, how we were able to feel, I think it's much more easy to confront them, because at least people know where they're working towards to. And the problem is, we don't know. We're so much connected with our surrounding. We often we accept the comfort zone, so it's much more difficult to confront those things.
And so what you're saying there is, it's what's on the other side of our fear that really gives us
Insights.
yeah
If you're able to confront the fears, there is a really big key to open many doors in ourselves. It's huge. Once again, it's only just a fear.
Yeah. So in your estimation, in your opinion, where, like, because you said, everyone's fears are different. It's based on your perspective or whatever. Like, where, in your opinion, does fear come from then? What is it? Where does it come from for each person?
Can be literally, can be really everything. Fear can have many reasons, many,
Yeah.
many. I mean, to give you one little example, I can give you hundreds of examples. One example was kind of interesting. Last summer, for instance, so we live in Switzerland, so it's high up in the mountains. We have the horses running around everywhere, and there was a person who came, and we were hiking up, and there was a lot of fog. Everywhere there was a lot of fog. So that was the first day when the people just arrived. So we go up and we're searching the horses. So she never really saw the environment. And then we were hiking completely up on the highest point, and the fog goes away. And then she sees that actually she's standing on a cliff. I mean, it's still very wide. It's not no danger at all. But she was becoming very afraid because she has afraid of heights and all those things. And so I said, okay, we support her, we take her hand, we say, okay, no problem, we will guide you down. And then, so after 1 day, 2 days, she was always afraid to go up again because, the height was too difficult to confront. And then one day I was able to convince her, say, hey, listen, don't worry, I will guide you, will walk next to you. And we go to the horses, and the crazy thing is, when we were walking on the right side, it was really kind of dangerous. It's like a very small pathway. But on the left side, there was, the mountain. So you can, if you want, you can even hold it with your hand. But then she was not afraid at all.
Wow.
So I asked her, well, it doesn't make any sense. This position where we are now is much more difficult than on top. So I started thinking, okay, what can be the reason? Because that's not the whole thing at all. So I finally, after a little bit of thinking, I figured out like it's not about having afraid of heights. It's about letting go of control.
Yeah.
This woman was still able to hold something with her left hand, even if it's more dangerous, because she can control something. On top, even if it's, I don't know how was the thing in English terms, but I'll say 50 meters wide,
Yeah.
it was 100 feet or something.
Yeah.
So there was no danger at all. But the fact that she's not able to hold something on the sides, for her is too difficult.
Wow.
So the fear is letting go of control. It's not about the height.
Right.
And
I mean, even using your example of the water for you, like if you looked at that, is that a similar thing that you see? Because in essence, if you're in the ocean, I've grown up in Australia. We spend a lot of time at the beach. There's a lot of sharks in the ocean here. Like there's that thing, right, where you don't know what's underneath you. You don't know what's beneath the surface. You can't control the outcome of everything. I mean, even as far as like how the ocean behaves is very unpredictable and erratic.
For sure. I mean, that's a good example what you say, because Australia is one of the countries where you still have a lot of wildlife. In Europe, it doesn't exist anymore. So that's a really big difference. But obviously, I do think, in my scenario, it's the depth. I think it's also a bit the depth of life. You cannot really see. You cannot really, the unknown. That's often the thing that's confronting. You need to have a lot of trust and confidence to really surrender to the water and to the depth and all those things.
Wow. And so working with that lady around the control aspect of her fear, like how do you see, because I mean, horses are such a great example. I mean, the type of ride you have on a horse when you control it, and then the type of ride you have on a horse when you are, in communion and you're riding with the horse are very, very different. So like, can you talk a little bit more about that? Like how we're such controlling, like, we just want to control everything. We don't want, and it ties in so nicely with the comfort zone thing too, because we want to control our surroundings to know that we're going to be okay, that we're not going to all of a sudden be killed by something. So talk a little bit about that, about control and letting go of it, or how do we change that?
Yeah, I think that's so obviously letting go of control. The reason why we have difficulty letting go of control, because we don't have trust. If people would have trust, then everything would change. I have a lot of trust, a lot of trust. I know that everything in life always happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Always, in every moment, it always happens for a reason. So I try to give you 2 examples about this. So maybe that's more easy than to share people the bit of vision that I have on this. So for instance, the same example when I was leaving with my 2 horses from Belgium to France on foot. So I really do think if people are able to connect with their bodies, then you always have a guideline. Like literally every thought we have is going to trigger something in our body. Sometimes you can trigger the plexus, sometimes the stomach, sometimes it's going to be the left side of your brain, the right side. the moment we're able to connect with our body, to be honest, you can never make a wrong decision. It doesn't happen. So what happens? I'm very interested in these kind of topics. So I try to improve this and get more sensitive about this as much as possible. So what I tried to do when I left my horses for the first 2 weeks, I didn't use a map or a compass.
Wow.
Every direction I went, I always did on my inner guidance. So you can imagine if you hike in the forest, every 50 meters there is a section where you have to make a decision. So sometimes, if I go to the left, that's the way how it should be. There's the short way, the easy way. But you feel that you have to go to the right. You never know why, but you always have to listen to this. Often it's because you're going to meet a very beautiful person that way, or you're going to find a beautiful place to sleep, or there is always a reason why.
Yeah.
So to give you one more example about this, when I was leaving, I think after 1 week and a half of hiking, now it's a long story to keep it very short. In the completely beginning of my professional career, I was also guiding people in the south of Belgium on horseback through the forest. And with those people, often we make a little break in the middle of the forest. It was like a little bar where we can drink a beer or just a drink. And that was the beginning of my professional career, let's say. When I left on my journey after 5 days, a week and a half, I don't know exactly, of hiking, I turn around the corner and I end up at the exact same spot where I went with those people for a drink. I knew, obviously, I was in the region, but I have no idea that I was that close to where I was, because I came from a side that I'd never been before. So the reason why, in my opinion, it was so important to reach this point is because I needed to see the difference. At that moment, I ended my professional career. So coming to this point, I saw the difference in between where I started and where I ended. To see the whole path that I did in between was very necessary to see. So this just shows, if you're able to follow this inner compass, you always end up at the good position. Always. If I would have gone one road to the left, I would never have known that I was this close to the place.
Yeah.
So I do think it's kind of interesting. So obviously, if you're going to experience those things, you only get more and more in connection with this trust.
Yeah. And is that really what you would say? Because, I want to be able to tell people, because I completely agree. I think there's some really key elements to having this kind of life where you're much more connected with everything, and trust is definitely one of them that I work on a lot, and trusting myself, trusting my intuition, all that sort of stuff. Like how do you I want to say, how do you teach someone to do that? But what tools can you share with people? Like, how can people get better at trusting themselves?
Confronting their fears.
It's the full circle.
As simple as it is. As simple as it is and as difficult as it is. But you can start with very small ones. Because if you're going to confront one of your fears and you're going to see that actually it turned out very good and even better as expected, you will have much more trust.
Yep.
No, if I'm gonna ride, if I'm gonna ride a horse, for instance, I really trust a lot in my intuition. If I give a clinic, and a person comes to me and say, hey, I have a very difficult horse and it's very dangerous, he always bucks me off, and if I don't feel the same energy that this person is doing, I will trust on myself. I will just ride this horse and it's not going to be a problem. It can also be the opposite way around. That the person says, I have such a beautiful, calm horse, and then if I don't feel it, believe me, I will never get on. No single way.
Yeah. So I don't know how I'm going to formulate this question, but I'll try. It's around energy and the language of energy, because you touched on it. I've watched quite a few of your videos and you've touched on it through this podcast as well, where it's like, I don't really know how to ask this, but it's like, it's hearing something different. Like, it's not listening for the words. Horses also use a lot of body language. They use a lot of things, but the very beginning of a conversation with the horse for me begins with the energetic conversation that goes on. And just what you said then, like listening to, can you describe that a little bit? Like, I'm just so interested to hear your perspective on what that sounds like, what it feels like. How does it show up for you, that energetic conversation between, it could be you and a horse, but it could be really anything, you and yourself or you and anything.
if you really go very deep in this thing, then it doesn't matter at all anymore.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'll give you a good example about this. But it's something that I realized only just a couple of weeks ago. So always, if you go in life, you always go in more and more depth. You know, one of the biggest problems we also make today is that we always say we are part of our surrounding. We are part of the universe, I'll say. By speaking this out, we already separate ourselves from the universe. I am literally the universe. It's
Mm.
all inside of me. There is no separation.
Mm.
This can go in a very, very big depth. If I
Yeah.
if I see things like this, everything that I do now, when I walk on the street, everything is a part of me. But literally, if I'm gonna have a conversation with people, yeah, sometimes you have a very good connection with people. You know, it just goes smooth, and with some other people, you get triggered by something. You know, the reason why I get triggered by this person because it's a part of myself that I don't understand yet. So if you see everything in such kind of way, I'm not separating all the other people. This is
So
literally part of me. So if you also understand this, if you would have the world in its true existence, how everything should be, you know, really true nature, if this would be not changed by the human hand that we have today, then we have a guidebook around us everywhere we see. Because once again, this is part of us. We are the exact same thing. So let us say example, if you see, for instance, when it starts raining, you know, it starts raining often after the rain, and my feeling about this is everything feels like it's new. You know, everything's more oxygen, you can really breathe, you can. That's the exact same thing what we can do in life. If we are able to observe this thing, yeah, if we go through a difficult moment, for instance, you know, we have a lot of struggle in our mind, and often just taking a very cold shower, but a really cold one, getting out of the shower, you feel 10 times like you can breathe again. You know, you really wash something off.
yeah.
So that's the same thing. There is no difference in between the rain. The rain is doing the same to nature as you can do to yourself.
Yeah.
So if you're able to really observe things like this, then it makes much more easy. So if you now say to me, how do you start this connection? There is no start. It is always there. I can
Yeah.
close my eyes and I can now go to my horses, connect to my horses. I,
Yeah.
I am literally everything.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Of
Yeah.
course,
And
now I'm speaking in good moments. I cannot do this the whole day, obviously. It's an exercise.
yeah.
But the essence of our being is it never starts and never ends. The connection is always there.
Yeah. But I think also the more you're willing to exist that big energetically, you do somehow stay out there to some degree. Like there is, I think it's a muscle as well. And, you know, and I totally get and agree with what you're saying that there is no real start to this. It's really just about choosing something different in every moment. And I know for myself, the times that I'm like in my head or I'm, you know, I'm stressy about things is when I'm compressed energetically, like I'm taking up just this much space, like I'm in my body or I might be at my office desk. And then if I'm
Mhm.
like, boom, and I energetically expand out and connect with my horses here, I ride horses a lot in Costa Rica, like I just energetically go out,
Mhm.
everything becomes irrelevant.
For sure.
Yeah.
But it's an exercise.
It's
So
an
like I said,
exercise.
it's never always going to stay like this.
Yeah.
So, and I do think also something that's very important to share with the people is that we have to understand that every person is also unique in their way of being.
Yep.
That's one of the biggest mistakes we also make today is that we always compare ourselves with others. You know, if we, that's something we can really see now with all the retweets we give. Some people they wake up in the morning at 5, they're full of energy and they want to start the day, and some other people have the same type of energy but in the evening.
Yep.
There is a huge difference in between those people. You cannot really compare them with each other. So if we were able to really find our own personal way to reconnect with ourselves, then you can never really push this insight onto other people because it doesn't exist.
Yep.
You know, we really have to understand that every person is completely unique in their way of being.
And
That's
so and so how do you, because it's the same with horses as well, right? Like every horse is so unique within themselves as well. So can you just talk briefly, and I know we're nearly up for time here, so can you talk briefly then about how you approach people when you're working with them, and how you approach horses when you're working with them, based on that fact that every single being on this planet is so completely different from each other? Like, how do you guide them? How do you show them the way if that's what they're looking for when they're all so very, very different?
I listen. Often as simple as this. You have to listen. I'm not gonna push my opinion to the other people. I try to listen from them. And often when people feel that somebody's really listening to their way of being, they feel seen, they feel safe. And this is obviously, in many cases, this is already enough for most people.
Yeah.
The best way to help people is to help them to get their own insights.
Yeah.
So I just try to listen. The same with the horse. When a horse comes, you just listen. Okay, what's my horse representing? What can I learn from this horse in this situation?
Yeah.
And we often in life we do the opposite. Especially now we have coaches and we have life coach and all those things, and our goal, it's our job to help people. So we want to find so many different ways to really get to this point. But I'm not sure if that's really the good thing to do, to be honest.
Yeah. Wow. And I think the more you're willing to just acknowledge people exactly like you said for who they are in that moment and who they truly are, then they let their barriers down, and that's when you have that true connection with one another and with the horses as well. Yeah.
So most cases it's very simple.
Yeah.
We always make it complicated.
And I just want to ask one more question. I promise this is the last one. So when you say you ask that question when you look at your horse or you're working with your horse or whichever horse, what does this horse represent? What information do you get there? Like, what can you give me some examples of what that is?
What do you mean when I meet up with a horse?
Yeah, and you said like you approach a horse as each horse is very different, and one of the things you said a few times is, what does this horse represent? Like, what do you mean by that? What do horses represent?
I think it's a bit like people, generally speaking, for sure they represent an energy, but every horse is going to be different. So to give you 2 examples about this, my 2 horses, one of them is a mare. So what does she represent is pure softness and pure femininity. So obviously for me this is very important because I am the masculine side. So this is an energy where I'm close to her. That's something I feel, that's something I can adapt to, but I'm not there to the point that I can really fully integrate it into my life. Sometimes I'm a man, I'm driven, I have a goal for my mind, and I want to reach it, but this can be on a softer way. So this is something she can teach me, obviously very good. And then I also have another horse, and before he was a stallion, now he's a gelding. That's a whole other story. But what does this horse represent? He has something that's very proud. He has a really big energy, but at the same time, he's very, very humble. And this is a thing that you don't see anymore that often with men these days. Often we have a big energy, and we want to, often there is a big ego next to this thing. So he can really teach me how to find this thin balance in between. Just staying humble. It's such an important thing in life, especially for men.
Yeah, cool. And so what's next? What are you creating in the world? Where can people see you? What's next in your world?
So what we're doing now, we're working on a very big project. We're already waiting for this. I mean, I'm for more than 12 years, I think. So these days, more and more people start big projects where they try to invite people, combine people, also like you're doing with your podcast. So this is also something I really love doing. So now we found a beautiful property in France, in the south of France. So we searched something with a lot of room to accommodate people. We signed a big place for the horses. So often in France, if you're going to search for such kind of properties, you end up with castles. So we found a beautiful castle in Aveyron, completely renovated, all clean, all good. So the goal would really be to to really invite people. So we do a retreat, obviously,
Yep.
but we're also going to work with multiple people. So I can only just share my opinion. It's only just my vision. So I do think the goal of life is to really listen to multiple people, to hear different perspectives of people, combine all those perspectives, and get to the essence of what life came into existence. So I need to find the good people on which we resonate. We're gonna all bring them together in the castle. And when people come to our retreats, it's all about finding their own rhythm again. So when you wake up in the morning, like I said before, some people have this energy, they can go. But if you feel I need to stay in my bed till midday, there's going to be a reason. You have to really follow this again. So what we will do is we're going to offer multiple things during the day, but people can make their own decision what to follow and what not to follow.
Cool.
Very often when we do retreats now, it's very organized and it's very structured. At 8 we wake up, at 9 we do the meditation, at 10 we do this, but it's once again this people, in my opinion, have to let go of this. Follow what is good for you. So that's one thing we would like to do. We're also going to create a really big online platform connected to the castle, so people can follow what we do at this location. But we're also going to invite many people all over the world, not only just horse related, but just on a bigger perspective. And then just combine all those visions. And well, anyway, it's a very big project.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Beginning next year.
And do you know yet when the first retreat will be available for people?
So in the summer months, we always still come back to Switzerland, so that's for sure. But now it depends. Normally, in the next 2 weeks, we should have more. How to say in English? We have more. We know if it's going to happen or how difficult it is. So maybe one thing I can share for the people who follow. So something very business and very practical. We have a company in Switzerland, and we want to buy something in France. Very complicated, not easy at all. So we need to have a lot of personal income. So we need to raise around 600,000, 500 to 600,000 personal income. At the moment, we are at 350. We're talking to multiple people. So what do? We need to have another 150,000. So we offer to people starting from 30,000. Some people say, hey, can you do crowdfunding? That's something I don't like that much. So what we do, we make a contract with people for 5 years. Everything is going to be refunded. And during those 5 years, people can follow 1 week or 2 weeks. They can come to the castle. They can follow everything we do completely for free. And this starts at 30,000. So maybe some people would be interested, and you can just let me know by email or by social media.
I love it. It's like a ground level investment in like a future creation. Yeah. Very cool. Invest your money.
And refunded, so you don't lose anything.
Yeah. But invest in something that's actually creating something magical and great in this world, which I think is awesome. So yes, we will share everything we can to get people in touch with you guys. And thank you so much for being here. It's been an epic 30 minutes. I'm so grateful for you joining me. And, I'll look out for when I can come and do a retreat with you. I travel quite a bit, so I would love to come and check out your properties. And thank you so much. Thank you, Matthias.
You're always welcome. And I really appreciate the invitation for your podcast. And I'm also wishing you all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. See you next week.
Ciao.